Hello and welcome back to the Remote CEO podcast. I am super excited about my conversation today because I am joined by a guest who is Anne Ryan. Anne is a business mentor who specialises in helping service-based female entrepreneurs scale to multiple 6 and 7 figures using simple, high-impact business models. She has built her own multi-7-figure business in construction and scaled an online coaching business to 500k plus a year, working less than 4 hours most days, which is my ultimate goal. Definitely going to be talking about that. And her approach is actually really rooted in simplicity, no fluff, no unnecessary complexity, just strategies that create sustainable growth without burnout. So I'm talking to her today to see how we can replicate some of these things in our business, ultimately achieve the goal of working 4-hour days, because I know that that's the goal for so many people. So welcome, Anne. Thanks for joining me. Do you want to share a little bit more about you and your background?
Sure, yeah. Firstly, thank you, Sophie. Thank you for inviting me to be here. So my name is Anne Ryan. I have an offline business in the construction industry, and online I'm a business mentor and a money mindset coach, and I really work with women in business. My mission is to really empower women to kind of own their worth and, ditch their money blocks and just kind of really become financially independent and live a life without having to sacrifice or without having limitations that, as women, we often take on multiple roles. And, even though men also take on multiple roles, somehow they are able to kind of really focus on the roles that bring in the finances, whereas women tend to, have the mothering role and so many other identities that they carry as well. Online, I'm really, really passionate about showing my clients how to leverage their time so they can have it all. It's often through high ticket offers, so I help them to create those offers. And then, about how they position themselves online and how to accelerate their authority online. So they are seen as leaders and, they sort of step into that kind of CEO identity and all that kind of thing. So yes, I do teach my clients how to do business simply and in just a few hours. And it's by really through mastery, right? And doing less, but doing things better, through refinement and not feeling the need to follow every new shiny object and do too many things. Yeah, there's a lot of mindset and a bit of strategy.
Amazing. It sounds like we're very aligned in how we approach business, which is amazing. And that's essentially what this podcast is all about, is helping people live their life as well as make money. But for me, like, my life is more important than anything else. And like, my well-being is more important than anything else. And I really want to, through this podcast, like, share that. So it sounds like you really embody that and like teach your clients that as well. And obviously with the 4-hour kind of work day and trying to get it to be more as most streamlined and simple as possible, it is all about, I guess, working a bit smarter rather than harder. And that's definitely something that I try to embody as much as I possibly can. So I know you've built a few different things online and offline. I would love for you to tell us a little bit more about your journey with business. Kind of, where did you start? Like, where did your career come from? And then tell us a bit more about your business that you built offline in the construction industry, and then how that kind of transitioned into online.
Okay, all right. So going way back, and I won't spend too much time on way back, I did graduate as a construction engineer. So I worked in the construction industry in London and, as a 22-year-old or something, and, a woman of colour as well. And this was back in the 90s. I'm a little bit older than you, Sophie. So, the world was a different place, right? And it wasn't a very pleasant place for women to be on building sites. So I left that career well and truly behind me. I went traveling. I ended up in Australia, married, and worked in corporate and worked across many different industries. And I kept finding myself working around that sort of project management and business strategy. And so when I had kids, I was kind of earning more than my husband, quite honestly. And so it kind of made sense for us financially that I would return to my corporate career and he'd actually stay at home with the kids. So that was the start of our first unconventional kind of approach to life. And then, we sort of decided that we wanted to start our own business, and we had a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old at home. and we started a business in the construction industry. We borrowed $300,000 against our home on a really high interest rate too, because we were already like 80% mortgaged. So to borrow more than that meant a very high interest rate. And we had two little kids, 2-year-old, 4-year-old at home. So it was kind of a pretty major risk, but it also, look, we both felt like we were employable, right? So we had the backup that we could always get back and find work. So it didn't feel as big a risk back then. It felt like it's exactly what we wanted to do. And we turned the business into $1 million in the first year. Yeah.
Oh,
so,
wow.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Not all profit, but in revenue, we brought in $1 million in the first year.
Yeah.
You know, we had,
incredible.
When your back is up against the wall,
you make it happen.
You make it happen. You make it happen. Yeah. And that was about 16 years ago. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So that business is doing amazing. We've just had our $5th $1 million quarter in a row. And and it's running, it's really well established. We've got a great reputation. And so that's going well. And then about 6 years, I started online. And it was more of a passion project, you could say, because I felt this strong desire to work with women and to kind of empower women. And it was hard. It was different. It was completely different to working offline. When I came online, I was the face of the brand. It was me. I was selling myself, whereas we were selling, a very niched area of construction, but we were selling kind of a different service. It wasn't me. So it was hard. Yeah.
Yeah. I can imagine. I think there's so many things to unpack there. I'm going to start with the investing 300k from your house into your business. And you said obviously you knew that was a risk, but it doesn't feel to me that you were scared about that. You were fully in belief that was the right decision to make. How did you come to that decision, and where were you spending that money to be so sure that it was going to come back to you?
It all went into the business to create cash flow to pay, because we had to employ staff and to make sure that we had enough for wages, and we had to buy materials up front. And, so it was a cost of doing business. We needed that sort of capital to get started. So it wasn't like we were able to pay ourselves. We had to make the money, and really there was some really tough times, in the early days. And like I said, even though we turned over $1 million in our first year, it wasn't like profit. I think we barely made any profit. We did pay ourselves a little wage, but look, we knew it was a risk, but we knew also that it was a risk worth taking. I think we were in our sort of mid-30s at that point, and it was like, if not now, when? When do you take these risks?
Yeah.
But I've sort of always been a bit of a risk taker.
Yeah, I feel you. Me too. But I think it's interesting to speak to somebody else that is also really open to taking risks, because I also am open to taking risks. I think financial risks I've always struggled a little bit with, more so because there is that scarcity mindset sometimes, which comes from obviously conditioning over a period of time. But I feel like this part of risk taking is obviously part of entrepreneurship, and if you want to start a business, there are naturally some risks, some more calculated than others, that are involved in that. But one I think that I see consistently from a lot of people that I've personally worked with over the past 5 years of running my own business is that a lot of people look at investing in their business with their personal money as a cost rather than an investment. Was there any kind of mindset shifts that you had to do personally, or that you do with your clients, to help them overcome that barrier of looking at it as you are going to hopefully get this back at some point if you are putting in the right strategy and the right work?
You get an ROI on your investment.
Yeah.
On your investment, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Absolutely. So firstly, we've still not paid off that debt, right? To date. We could have paid it off 10 times over by now, but we haven't, because it's a tax deduction, right? The interest that we pay is a tax deduction. So our accountant is like, don't pay it off,
Love
just keep
it.
it as a liability against the business. So there's that aspect of it, right? When you're borrowing for your business. And yeah, absolutely. I mean, you want to see an ROI, right? And if you're investing, especially in sort of the coaching industry and in mentorship and learning something that you haven't fully kind of mastered, then you are investing in yourself in your own education. You know, it's like, it's no different to, I suppose, paying to go to university, except it's probably a lot more practical. And, you know, and if it is something that you are really invested in, like, you have to really want it. You know, whether it's a university degree or any other business investment, you have to be really committed to what it is that you want, and you've just got to go for it.
100%. If you don't have that kind of drive and commitment towards something, I always think like it's going to be very hard. It's going to be like trudging through mud for you to be able to get there, because you're just going to be resentful of the journey because you're not there yet. Like, you're constantly going to be thinking about that goal, and because you're on a path towards it and you're not getting there like super quickly, it's always going to feel difficult. So I feel like, yeah, you have to absolutely have like that goal in mind, to be able to work towards something and really like have a deep desire to make it work. So it makes perfect
Absolutely.
sense.
Trying is not enough.
No,
It's got to
I
be
completely
an
agree.
absolute commitment, you know. And even the transition from my offline business to my online business, I was still, for the first 4 years of online, I was still very involved in my offline business, and my online business didn't grow at the same rate because I had that as my safety net. You know, I
Yeah.
kind of didn't fully commit to my online business because it was like I was a little bit half in, half out, because I had that as a safety net. The moment I made the commitment and I said, right, we are going to employ someone to replace me, you know, so I can actually walk away. I can no longer use that as an excuse for why I can't fully commit to my coaching business. Like, immediately I saw a shift. Like, within 3 months, I started hitting 50K months,
Yeah,
and then, you know, went on to make 100K months and so on. It really is
definitely.
about just making that full commitment, no backup plan.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's the full commitment part, and also a matter of focus, right? Because like what I've learned, particularly as a hard lesson over the past year, because I've just started a second business, is that as soon as you step back from something and put your attention on something else, obviously, naturally, the first thing starts to dwindle off.
Yeah,
And that's normal, obviously, but it's about where you focus that energy on, like the thing that you want to most achieve. And yeah, like I completely agree everything you said there. It's you have to like be all in to
yeah,
something to really see the results for it.
yeah, yeah. And I think I think women generally are able to multitask better than most people. But even amongst women, I'm not sure if you're into human design and that kind of thing.
Absolutely am. Yeah.
So, like, you know, there are the manifesting generators, and
Yeah.
they're able to even take that multi-passion, you know, to the next level. And then there are others who really will do so much better by just staying focused, you know, and just going all in on the one thing. But I also think, I mean, we won't go into human design too much in this, but people also use
Could
that
talk
as an
about it for
excuse.
hours, but I know that not everyone is not everyone's thing.
Yeah, I know. But it can also be used as an excuse, you know.
Yeah, true.
It's my human
True.
design. Well,
True.
yes,
The
you're
same as like
making,
astrology. Oh, it's my star sign. That's happening because I'm a Pisces or whatever.
you're
Yeah,
right.
definitely. What are you, out of interest? Because I'm genuinely interested. What are you?
I'm a 4/6 generator.
Okay. I
Yeah.
can't remember my numbers, but I'm a manifesting generator.
Okay.
I cannot remember. I can never remember the numbers, but it's yeah, it's all kind of. I have to really lead with my like intuition.
Yeah.
Essentially, is what
Yeah.
comes out of it.
Yeah. And whereas
Yeah.
I'm actually better with responding. So I'm great in this
Interesting. Okay.
interview kind of scenario. I'm better than if I had to just initiate something and come and talk, you know,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
give a
No, I'm
speech.
fascinated in it. Like I'm
Yeah.
really fascinated in stuff like that. So I love that we've just gone and had a little side conversation about that. That's super cool. But yeah, like absolutely. I think we all have to just feel into how we kind of generate our work, right? Like, and how we focus, what we focus on. And I guess like that transition from like offline to online for you? Like you said, you had to shift into being the face of the business. But what I also picked up on from what you said at the beginning was, obviously you've come from like the construction background, which I'm going to make an assumption here, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but is probably very heavily male dominated. And then you've kind of moved into this world of like working more with women. Like, how was that transition as well?
Yeah, that's a really, really good point, because I did have to really be aware of that as well. And even to date, I probably have sort of some masculine energy that I bring into the way I do business and the way I work, and how I'm able to be really productive and effective and just get shit done and get on with the rest, rather than fluff around and look at 5,000 different things. I sort of know what my non-negotiables are. And even though I quite publicly talk about scaling a business in under 4 hours a day, quite honestly, there are days when I just work 30 minutes, and I can get everything done because my business is simple.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. And the thing is, Sophie, it was through necessity, right? It became my strategy. It became my selling point. It became part of my messaging, but it actually started off through absolute necessity, because I had an offline business, I had an online business, I had kids at home, and I had elderly parents, right? And they'd migrated from the UK to Australia, and things kind of went a bit sideways with their health. And I was it. They had no other family to fall back on or rely on. And so I took on that responsibility as well. So my life was full, and I literally couldn't work more than that. And so through having to simplify, kind of, I realized this can be super effective if people have too much time on their hands. That's why they go looking around at, scrolling through social media and looking around at all the other solutions, thinking what they're doing isn't working. It's because they have too much time.
Yeah, no, it's true. And like, if you have to make something work with the time that you've got, that's what you've got to do, right? And you're right, like, people do have too much time on their hands. And actually, if I look at myself back in my corporate career, I worked as a buyer for about 11 years before I started my own business. And my set hours were 8 hours a day, obviously, as it normally is, but often worked later than that. If I look at how I filled my time in that 8 hours of the day, was I working every second of that? Absolutely not. Like, I would be out having a chat at like the vending machine, or like I'd be like, oh, let me just check the news today, or like something, just random things. And it's like, we can fill our time doing things that are completely irrelevant, but actually, if we can really stay focused on like the thing that we want to do, and we've got that end goal in mind, and we've got the drive to be achieving that end goal, we can get shit done basically in the time that you've got, for sure. And I have a massive problem with focus. Like, it's been a big thing for me, and I'm working with a coach to try and like help me channel my focus in the right places, especially where I have come away from, I was a corporate girl, right? Like, I went from corporate world into starting my own business. I was living in London, and London's a million miles an hour. So I was kind of still living at that pace, but then decided to up my life and travel and be nomadic. Obviously, in this lifestyle that I'm living right now, there's a million and one distractions. I can go to the beach, I can go out for brunch, I can go work at a coffee shop. That there's so many things that I've got distracting me all the time. So it's a big goal of mine this year to kind of really hone in on my focus. Like, I'm staying put in one place and trying to simplify absolutely everything I'm doing to basically be able to achieve exactly what you're saying. Because I also don't sit here and work 8 hours down my business. Like, I work around my lifestyle at the moment. So it's like, okay, if I want to go to yoga in the morning, that means I need to work in the afternoon, kind of thing. But it might only be like 3 hours a day. And in that 3 hours, I want to be as productive as I possibly can. So I'd be really interested to hear, obviously we talk about the word simplify, simplicity. Like, what does that actually mean to you in your business? What does simplicity look like?
So I think you can scale to $1 million with one offer. And that's the thing. When you are focused on one thing, like, some people might go, oh my God, I can't think of anything worse. I would get bored. Now, that's a whole different conversation, right? That's kind of like, well, you can do what you want, but if you want to keep business simple, one, maybe two offers, right? And then it's just a matter of really kind of getting your marketing so super dialed in that, you're often just, so people just know exactly what it is that you're selling. So you're not kind of, when people have multiple offers, it's like, what is she selling this week? What is she actually an expert in? There's so many things that we need to kind of consider when we're selling multiple things, right? And I think with a huge audience, yeah, sure, go for it. You can. But if you do have a small audience, then I think, really positioning yourself as an expert in one thing and going all in and selling that same thing over and over and over again, you can literally get away with marketing. I mean, I recommend, doing something every day, but even marketing 3 to 4 times a week,
Yeah.
and then it's a matter of sales fulfillment. And because I'm in the service-based industry, it's the actual delivery of the services, right? And if you leverage your time and you do have something that's more kind of group focused, then again, in 2 to 3 hours a week, you could actually deliver the service as well, let alone per day.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I agree. And it's taken me I think it's taken me the 5 years that I've been in business to understand that, right? But because I think when you first start, I didn't know what I was doing. I was just dabbling my hands in so many different things and trying to understand, like, what is my purpose? What is my niche? Where are my expertise the most needed and wanted? So you do tend to, like, overcomplicate things and dabble in multiple different things, because also I'm multi-passionate about, like, lots of different things. So I kind of wanted to incorporate a lot of them, and I would definitely describe myself as like a jack of all trades but a master of absolutely none. Like I've got a lot of different skill sets,
Yeah.
and holistically they all work together. But am I excellent in one of those? No, probably not. But, like, I know enough to be able to give that as value. And I feel like I have learned the hard way, because I've gone around all of the houses, and again, manifesting generator, I have a million and one ideas of, like, the things that I want to do. I've had to really learn how to rein myself back in and say, hang on a minute, Soph, like, if you want to get to this right now, you're speaking to 5 different subjects, 5 different offers, like, it's so confusing. Like, looking at it from a customer's perspective, it's really confusing. And I think right now in my personal business, I'm pivoting to try and really focus on just channeling all of my attention into, like, one specific thing and keep speaking about that. Because also, obviously, when it comes to marketing, and even marketing to a small audience, which is something that you talk to, like, somebody needs to understand, like, see your message, like, over 30 times to be able to then say, right, this is the decision that I'm making to buy from you. So if you're then giving them 10 different messages in that 30 touch points, they're going to be like, what the hell does this girl do? And how is she going to help me? So I feel like, yeah, that is the key to simplicity, really, isn't it? Like, it starts with your offer, and then from there, obviously, you can simplify other areas of the business, like streamline your back of house, simplify your marketing, and really then you'll get a bigger impact.
Yeah, exactly. Simplicity doesn't necessarily equal easy, right? It's just not complicated, and it requires mastery, requires refinement, it requires, fine tuning things to keep getting that extra 1%, extra 1%, extra 1%. It is a lot easier to just be busy and create and create and create new things, right? Instead of going, I have this one thing, how can I make it sound even better? How can I position it differently? How can I, so you get creative with your marketing, not so much with creating new offers. Yeah. And just through repetition, just through people hearing you talking about the same thing all the time, you're seen as an expert.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why you
They
want to, especially if you're a
associate.
service business, you want to position
Exactly.
yourself as the leader, right? You want to position yourself as the go-to person in that field. And a lot of people don't do that. And I think this has been a problem for me as well. Like, where it's like you're just speaking about too many things, and then it's just not even known as to what you're actually supposed to be the expert in.
Yeah, look, and again, it's not so much a right or wrong, but it's a choice, right? You get to choose. And for me, I've built my business to fit around my life. My life, it comes first, but I'm still making money. I'm still having an impact, and so I've kind of got the best of both worlds. And in order to achieve that, I had to keep it simple. And so, yeah.
Yeah,
So it's a
no, I
choice.
agree. Definitely, it is a choice, and I think a lot of people get sucked in by what we see on social media, which is like, you have to have 1 million followers, and you have to have 1 million offers, and there's so much noise. There's so much noise, and it's obviously really hard, especially if you're new in business, to know which advice to follow and which advice not to follow. Why do you think so many people rely so heavily on building this like big audience, these big offers, and like creating 1,000,001 different things? What do you think is at the core of that, like that people need to address?
A couple of things. I think when it comes to audience size, there's the ego. There's the ego of working with more people and doing more. And then when it comes to this constant creation, look, there's a genuine case of it's what lights you up. I get that and I respect that. And also, it's that shiny object. Because if you had something that sold every single freaking day without you having to think about it, you wouldn't be thinking about creating 101 other things. So
Yeah,
rather than going, right, how am I going to get this even better? How am I, and really achieving mastery in that one thing, it is easier to jump around and to try something new and try something new and try something new. So it's a
yeah, I
little
think
bit
it
of
probably
both.
comes. It definitely goes back to what you said about ego, though. I think because if you can see something isn't working for you, or you've been trying at it for a few period of time, instead of saying, "Oh, let me change direction, let me pivot this," because a lot of people don't understand that that's even an option or how to pivot something. It's easier to quit that and move on to the next thing, right? And like again, what you say, shiny object syndrome, we're just constantly chasing the next thing that's potentially going to get us the results. But actually, if we really focus on the first thing, and like it's like a garden, we nurture it, we grow it, we let it grow, like we can really see the results of that, like the before and the after. Whereas if we're trying to tap into so many different things, it's very hard to see like what actually is working versus what could you have done differently, to get the first thing to work in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's in a nutshell it, right? It's the
Yeah,
our attention span and just kind of and all the distractions, the TikToks and the reels and the constant options. There are so many options, which is amazing, which is awesome that we have so much choice, but it also creates a lot of confusion. It's kind of like maybe that'll be easier.
yeah,
Whether it's, I don't know, some affiliate thing or a new product or a new service or a new something else or a new promise, right? Because people are selling all the time. And sometimes when what you've got doesn't seem to be working, the easiest thing is to just jump ship.
definitely. We're very fickle sometimes as human beings, and we can the grass is always greener, right? Is kind of, especially where we do live in such an online focused world now, which in some ways obviously amazing. Wouldn't be living here in Thailand right now if I didn't have an online business, but in other ways I find it really detrimental. Like I hate that I get so distracted by things online. I hate that there's so much conflict in information, a lot of like incorrect information, and it also isn't good. Always also, like I have a mental health business as a second business, and it's not good for our mental health either. Like to have all of this stuff going on, it's really detrimental. So we have to be really careful, like what we focus and what we pursue, and which information sources we listen to and trust, because a lot of it, particularly around business on Instagram and TikTok, is just a load of rubbish, honestly. So yeah, I think there's a lot to say for really choosing your sources of reliable information and tuning into what feels right for you as well.
Yeah, and that's the thing about marketing as well, right? I'm a marketer as well, so I know how marketing works, because you portray everything in a particular way. And so, and it's true. I've had a lot of success. It's true. I've had many clients who've had a lot of success. But will absolutely everyone achieve that level of success? Well, it's possible, but you've also, it's not guaranteed. And so sometimes people kind of fall for the marketing, this kind of overnight success concept. My overnight success took about 15 years, but you know what I mean? It's just like there is no such thing, but it's positioned that way, right? And so that's why I often talk about 4 hours, because I think it is achievable in 4 hours, but with mastery, it's achievable in a lot less, but not everyone can get there immediately.
No, and like you say, there is no such thing as overnight success. Rome was not built in a day, and you shouldn't need to get there immediately. Like when I first started my business, I was working 12-hour days, and was I probably fluffing some of that and like trying to figure out like what I was doing in that meantime? Absolutely. But now I definitely try to like we both live our lives first, right? And our business kind of comes alongside that. But I try to, with the time that I do invest in my business now, focus on like the things that are actually going to drive the biggest impact. Like you've just mentioned around like, even if you have a small audience, obviously it's possible to market to them. So tell us a little bit about that part that you speak to around, you don't need this big audience to sell. Like how do you utilize marketing to not need the big audience? Yeah.
Yeah. So really, it's because it's a high value product that you're selling, right? So you don't need the volume, you don't need the quantity of sales that you would, to achieve. Let's say you wanted to make $10,000 in a month. Yeah, if you had 100 products, you would need to make 100 sales. So to make 100 sales, you would need to have, I don't know, 1,000 people in your audience. Let's just say that's assuming, that you've got a decent conversion rate. But if you want to make one $10,000 sale, you could probably do it with an audience of 100. You could probably do it with an audience of 50. Yeah. Because yes, it's a high value product, but as long as you can demonstrate the value is there, then you don't need as many people to purchase. If it's a $5,000 product, you need 2 sales, that kind of thing, right? And so it's a numbers game. Ultimately, the lower the value of your offer, the bigger the audience needs to be in order for you to make more and more sales, and achieve that
sure.
same goal. Yeah.
For sure. And a lot of people, I think myself included, over a period of time have had money blocks around selling like super high ticket. And it's not for, I don't think it's for everybody. Like for me to sell like super high ticket, I feel like doesn't fully align with what I want to achieve, because one of my values as a founder is to make things as accessible as possible, because I know that there's a lot of people that can't afford that. But equally, I need to make money, I need to utilize my time in the right way. So like I feel like that for me personally, there's a balance between the two. But like there are people that are really, what's the word, like stuck, and like can't accept that they are able to charge X amount for their services or their products, because there's just like this money mindset block. And I know you work a lot with money mindsets. Did you have to do any of that work? Like when you were saying, right, I'm going to do a high ticket offer, is that where you started, or was that like a gradual progression into that?
It was sort of semi high ticket. I think I started off around that $2,500-3,000 for 3 months work, of working with me. And yeah, so that's where I started. So there's a couple of things that I want to address. I totally get this, wanting your work to be accessible. And there are so many ways that we can make our work accessible. I do a lot of free stuff, right? Genuine, high value, free masterclasses, trainings. It's part of my strategy. Quite honestly, I lead with generosity, deliver incredibly high valuable trainings. The only difference between what I teach for free and what I teach to my paying clients is we have a very specific conversation that's relevant to them. The information is exactly the same. Like, truly. I will tell my clients, go watch the free training and let's take the conversation deeper. And then I can obviously give them feedback. We can have very specific conversations, whether it's around messaging or sales or whatever it is, offer creation or whatever it is that I've done my free training in. So that's really the only difference between. So I feel like I'm still having impact and helping thousands and thousands of people with my free trainings. But then some people are able to make high ticket sales just from watching my free trainings, but those who want to commit, I didn't have money to start my first business. I borrowed 300,000 to start my first business, so it's kind of like you need to have skin in the game. You will take it so much more when your back is up against the wall. You are going to show up in such a different way for your investment. If you paid someone $50 to get advice and you paid someone else $5,000 to get advice and they told you slightly different things, who would you listen to?
Yeah, I'd listen to the $500. Yeah, $5,000, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the thing, and there's so much research that's been done that shows that there's this perception of value that people get when they pay for something. There's been these tests that have been done with red wine, right? And clear skin red wine, exactly the same wine in 3 bottles, 3 different labels, 3 different price points, but it's exactly the same wine inside the bottle. Everyone perceived the more expensive wine to be the best. It's just a value perception thing that people have, and so similarly, when people, there are so many courses out there that never get completed, me included. I've bought stuff for $97 and I haven't even opened the email. It seemed like a really good idea because it was a Black Friday sale or whatever. And I never looked at it. Now, if I paid $9,700 for it, you can bet your ass that I will be opening that email, I'll be sitting down, I'll be turning off all distractions, and I will be making sure that I get my return on investment.
Absolutely, yeah.
So it's kind of, and it's, I think the moment, sorry, it sounds like I'm getting opinionated here, and I am.
No, not at all. Please.
The moment we decide for someone else that they can't afford us, we disempower them.
Yeah, you're right.
It's Definitely. Not my business, whether someone can afford me or not. It's not my business to decide whether they can afford me or not. It's not my business to, but I get it though, Sophie, I do get it. There are people in this world who can't afford things at a particular level. I get that.
Yeah, definitely. I guess it's all about who you want to call in, right? Who you want to attract into your business, what type of people you want to work with. And I think, like you just said, people that are paying a higher value are naturally going to invest, do the work, put the energy and time in, particularly if we're talking specifically to coaching or mentoring, for example, or online courses. People that are paying that high value, they've invested, they've taken a bit more of a risk than the person that paid the $97. That doesn't really matter if the course gets done or not. So yeah, I totally agree with you. I think that there's a lot of value in the high ticket courses and coaching packages that comes for both sides, because, for example, for me, I don't want to work with people that don't take the action, right? Because then they're going to come to me at some point and say, well, I didn't get the results, and that's not necessarily on me. That's only, I can't take the actions for people, so it's on them. But you're more likely to have somebody that is paying that lower fee to not take the action because they're not taking it as seriously. So no, I completely agree with your perspective on that, for sure. I think it's definitely a mindset shift that I'm still working through, for sure. I think I'm 70% through it and kind of get into a position where I feel more comfortable offering, not in a way of I don't want to overcomplicate my offer package structure, for example, but I definitely want to have something that accommodates for that accessibility, but then also know that I need to have that higher ticket to really work truly with the people that I would like to work with and be able to offer the value that I would like to be able to offer. So I feel I'm still trying to figure out my positioning with moving towards that high ticket, but it's really interesting to hear your perspective, and I completely get kind of where you're coming from with that. It's a really good viewpoint to have in terms of the people that are actually going to do the work, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, and there's that strategy of having something low ticket. Some people have something low ticket, mid ticket, and high ticket, and that's fine. That's okay, right? It works. I just do free and high,
Which I also really like that approach. I think that's really nice, because it's actually, if we look at what I just said about accessibility, that's the most accessible you could possibly get, right? So it makes perfect sense.
Yeah. And truly, I'll preface this by saying, I was like saying nothing's held back, but I'll preface it by saying there's only so much you can share in a 30-minute or 1 hour masterclass, right? Whereas in a coaching container, if I'm working with someone for 12 months, then obviously the depth keeps going, right? Because we just keep building on things, and what we talked about in the first week becomes, we go even deeper. So that aside, the information, truly the foundation is exactly the same. What I teach for free and high. And to me, it feels simple. It feels like a really simple business model. But to other people, like I look at other people's business models, and to me, it feels complicated, but to them, it's simple. And if it is, then, that's okay too.
Yeah, I guess there's no right or wrong answer here, is there? It's that kind of like what's working for you, and
Exactly.
Going back to what we're talking about, like we built business around the lifestyle we want to live. As long as that's kind of matching up for you, and you're not feeling resentful for your business for taking too much of your time or not making you the right amount of money, whatever your goal is, I think as long as it's working for you, good, great. Like keep going with it, kind of thing. Yeah. Definitely. I would be really interested to know, like obviously you talk about kind of working anything from between 30 minutes to 4 hours a day. What are you doing with the rest of your time? Like obviously you put your life first. Like how are you spending that time in your life that you're not spending in your business?
It does vary. At the moment, it's kind of sorting out stuff. So sadly, my dad passed about 4 weeks ago. So for about Thank you. For about, the 12 months prior to him passing, he had a rough year. He was in and out of hospital. He had a lot going on. So, so I was actually quite busy taking him to appointments and just really kind of making sure that he kind of became the priority, because my kids are now 18 and 20, so they're adults. They're pretty capable. They both drive. So they need me less. But earlier on this journey, it was them, it was the school pick-ups, school drop-offs, taking them to activities. There was always something that needed to be done as a mum, right? And so what I do with my time has sort of shifted and changed a bit. I actually have a passion for real estate. I really love, buying and selling homes and renovations, and and it's actually separate to our construction business. It's more of a personal, investment thing that we do. And so sometimes I have a project like that on the go, so I've just got stuff. We're going to India for the whole month of April. Last year we went to Japan for a whole month. So it's kind of travel, there's always stuff. And I want to be able to, I'm a workaholic, quite honestly, like deep down inside of me. I love business. I love working, so if I have the time and I want to work, I'll work. But I don't have to work. That's the beauty of the way my business has been built. I really don't have to work. And even in our offline business, we've sort of now got a general manager in place. So both my husband and I could take off, and the business still continues. We have staff that do all the stuff. And so, yeah. And in my online business, I only got a VA after I hit about 50K months. But she, I can rely on her to manage things because we've been working together now for a couple of years. She knows me, I know her. We're totally in rhythm. My business is simple. So, she can do a lot of stuff. So,
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. No, I like that a lot. Like it really sounds like where you're at. I know it's taking your time to get there, but like where you're at right now is obviously where a lot of people would like to be. So it's been very inspirational kind of hearing your story and the journey that you've kind of gone on to get there. And I loved talking to people that also value their life, themselves, their health, their mental health, prioritizing over business, because at the end of the day, without us, without me as a person, my business doesn't exist. So I think it's really refreshing to hear that perspective, but still have so much kind of like drive and ambition and want to do the things. So yeah, no, it's really been nice to hear your story. Can you tell us a little bit more about like the offers that you've got available and like where people could find you for your services?
Thank you. Yeah, so my website is www.annryanstrategist.com. Anne Ryan Strategist is my, I suppose, part of my URL for all the different places, whether it's YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. We just repurpose content, So I really leverage Facebook for business. Again, simplicity, one platform. I went all in with Facebook. It's only more recently because, Facebook is a little bit hit and miss at times. And so just to have a bit of a backup is why we're on Instagram and YouTube. Yeah. And in terms of offers, it's simple. I have a mastermind, which is kind of my main leveraged offer. There are actually 2 tiers in the mastermind. So that's the thing. You can create 2 touch points, mind you. It's still sort of that higher ticket price point. So one tier has more one-to-one and one tier is group only, but it's still one big container, it's very, very, my time is very leveraged. And I also take one-to-one clients, but very few. And it depends on my own, personal life and what's going on. And, so right now I may take someone for the month of March, but I won't be taking a 3-month client at this point because I know I'm taking the whole of April to go traveling. I will still connect with my mastermind clients, but that's literally going to be, an hour, 90 minutes a week. So while I'm traveling, I can still continue to do that, but I don't have much else that I have to do.
Amazing. That's the beauty of online business and simple online business. So that's amazing. Was there anything else you wanted to share today regarding the topics that we've spoken about?
No, thank you. I really appreciate you inviting me, and it's been so fun to kind of have this conversation too. I apologise. I've got a bit of a cough, which I've tried to suppress. Yeah, no, it's been lovely to catch up and to just sort of chat about my simple business.
No, I love it. I love it. I like all of the concepts that we've spoken about. And there's just there's so much power, I think, in what you're saying around like simplicity. It doesn't have to be overcomplicated. You don't need the big audience. I think everyone just gets, like we said, sucked in by all of the messages out there and overcomplicates things. And it's really straightforward. If we just focus on the right things, it can be really easy. We make it hard for ourselves. And I know I can speak for experience from this. And it's something that my whole focus this year, my whole goal is to strip back, simplify, stop overcomplicating, stay focused on the right things. So this has been, even for me, a very interesting conversation to kind of hear your perspectives on it. Just before we close, do you have one bit of advice for any entrepreneurs who are currently in that scale phase of online business? How can somebody scale their online business without working all hours of the day?
That's a good question. And I did want to touch on one other thing as well about
yes, please do.
Feeling like we are enough. That's a bit of a mindset thing. But often we overcomplicate things and we feel the need to do more when we don't feel like we're enough. We need to talk more, we need to do more, we need to create more, we need to be more, we need to be more visible. Because the concept of less is more actually people don't feel safe because they feel safer when they're doing more. Because again, it's old conditioning. We've been told the harder you work, you've got to work harder and all of those things, right? And so it actually doesn't feel safe for most people to do things simply and to do less. Yeah. And so I just wanted to touch on that. In terms of scaling, in line with the whole sort of conversation that we've had, it really is about, I sort of look at your offer. If you have a scalable offer, I'd recommend high ticket, but mid high ticket offer that's scalable, that's really good. If you really work on your packaging, positioning, messaging of that offer and build an audience. The thing is, we need, like, whilst I say we don't need a big audience, and I stand by that 1,000%, we still need to continue to build an audience because, we can't sell to the same 100 people when you have one offer, right? Whereas when you do bring in 500 different little offers, yeah, potentially you can sell multiple things to the one person, but that's something, you have to consider. You have to continue to build your audience. And then it's marketing, really to grab attention, because social media is noisy, online space is noisy. Having a website isn't enough. No one knows you'll exist unless you do the things to promote yourself and market yourself. Yeah, and with high ticket, connection is important. Low ticket, you don't need to connect with people. People will click and buy from a link. But with high ticket, it really is about building that relationship with people. And it doesn't mean having sales calls and long-winded conversations one-to-one. It just means, nurturing people through your content, through email, through whatever platform you're leveraging to really build that know, like, and trust.
Definitely, that part is key. Like the know, like, trust. Like, I think a lot of people forget about that part, like the customer journey piece that's involved around the sales.
Yeah,
which is obviously still part of marketing, but actually they're two separate pieces. So yeah, no, that's a really powerful way to end. And thank you. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing all of this and your experience with us. It's been super insightful for me, and I'm sure for anybody listening, also very inspirational as well. So thank you so much for joining, and it was lovely to chat to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, I enjoyed chatting to you too.
Okay.